We've been given the go-ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jason Tucker, and I am head of registration for ConFABulous 2020. And I proposed this panel because with all of this extra, I don't want to say time, but you know, with so many fewer distractions, believe it or not, I've been getting a lot more reading done. And one of the things that I've been missing is a place to talk about the books I've been reading, which, you know, normally I do at in-person conventions. So this is going to be a round table where everyone who participates, and we might get some people joining the Zoom meeting later. So everyone who's in the Zoom meeting is just going to be, we're just going to be having a little book chat. So Amber and Nick, why don't you introduce yourselves?
Give me the first. I'm Amber. I also help with ConFABulous a little bit with some of the marketing. And like Jason, have also found much more time to read than I normally have. I used to read all the time. I was the person in the classes where the teacher would have to tell me to put away my books because I was reading all the time when I should have been focusing on other things. And then I became an adult and ran out of time. So that's been one of the nice things over the last few months, that I've actually been able to read a little bit, which is, you know, more than nothing.
I'm Nick Graydon, and I am also here. And I also help out at ConSuite at Console Room is probably where some folks have seen me, but I've also been graced with an abundance of time to get a lot of reading done. And over this time period, I've managed to maybe not master, but definitely hone the art of walking and reading at the same time, which has actually gotten a lot of comments and is treated like an arcane art. On more than one occasion, I'm just like, how can you do that?
You need the Google Glass with ebooks.
Yeah.
I don't know if that exists or not.
I don't know. Does it?
I don't know if Google Glasses exist anymore.
Anymore, I'm not sure.
Wild, but that would be cool. Or something like that. I just, you know, I already wear glasses. If you could just project it right on here, I'd be bathed in the shade.
You'd be reading a holobook.
A HoloLens. That'd be cool. Someday we'll have cool heads-up displays. The future is coming.
Fingers crossed.
I've been reading a lot of sci-fi, so there's got to be a better future.
Really? You've been reading a lot of sci-fi? I'm shocked.
And
that
fantasy.
We might be talking about science fiction during this panel. So, Nick, what is the most recent book you finished?
See, okay, I've read a ton over this pandemic, but when you say the most recent book you've finished, we're talking about time, and time doesn't mean anything anymore. So off the top of my head, Amber and I have actually been reading Wheel of Time together, so I think that whatever one came before the current one was the one we finished. But as far as like reading so I'm kind of double dipping on in the literary world. We're reading like a big meaty fantasy that's the Wheel of Time, and then as my little side action has been a lot of sci-fi.
And what's the last one of those that you read?
The Ancillary Justice series. I took notes. I came prepared. By Anne Leckie. I hope I'm saying her name right. It came out in 2013 and was a debut novel, which just blows my mind because she knocked it out of the park. It won a bazillion awards: Hugo, Nebula, Arthur C. Clarke, Locus, and a bunch of others.
I have Goodreads up in the background, so I might look away while I look stuff up on Goodreads.
And I also am just going to take notes because I can always use another book.
Ancillary Justice. I like the cover.
It's real. So it's a series, And it's really cool to me because it has a lot of good juicy themes about like gender identity and like social cues related to gender identity. There's a lot of imperialism, and there's like a lot of social etiquette about like what you should and shouldn't do, because the main character is technically an AI. And so it's just like, okay, that is what humans do, but they're in a human body. And so one of the other cool things about it is in this book and in this world, they default to the female voice as opposed to like the male voice in like most of Western society. So for for most of it, gender is both a big deal, and I don't actually know the gender of a lot of characters until like other social cues come into play. And so it's really neat is that it's like I'm having to get way outside of my normal zone of just like male, female, how people identify. And so I really like that. And it's just like, I didn't even know the main character's gender until some sort of like dismissive comment referring to them as little lady. And even then the main character is like, okay, on this planet, in this culture, people are identifying me as female. And that's a really cool thing that the author is using in a space opera, in a sci-fi world, because they're traveling across systems and planets and just vast different cultures. And so it's like, you can't say, a man's a man's a man's, a woman's a woman's a woman, because they can be in two different planets within the span of a few days, and it couldn't be more different from one to the other. And so what we, people claim to hold as true and undeniable doesn't work a light year away. And it's a really good series, and it's one of those, when you get a book that you just cannot wait until the next time you can sit down and read and tell everyone else to just shut up because you're busy, really nice. So I can't say enough good things about it, but I should let other people talk.
Amber, go ahead.
Well, I think that book actually didn't it get in the way of us being able to start Wheel of Time, because you were like, hold on, I need to finish this series first before we can.
Maybe.
I'm pretty sure that was a thing.
Yeah. Okay, I admit it. I'm sorry.
Oh, I see a comment from David on YouTube. They discussed ancillary justice in the North Country Gaylaxian back in 2015.
Oh, okay.
Very cool. I haven't read it yet. Like the fact that I've been able to read it all has been really nice, because it's normally so hard for me to find time to read any these days. So my main focus has been Wheel of Time, which I started reading. I've noticed, it seems like I see a lot of people who have been picking that up lately. I started reading it probably 14 or 15 years ago for the first time, and used to, back in the day when I had time to, used to reread through the entire series after a new book was released. So I think by the time I started reading it, the first 9 or 10 books were out. So if you're unfamiliar with Wheel of Time, it's 15-book series. Most of them are like 1,000 pages. They're very, very long, but it's one of the most immersive worlds that I've ever been able to read. So I mean, I think it takes, in my mind, kind of like what Tolkien did with Middle Earth, and almost takes it to like a whole new level. There's so many characters that are, I mean, maybe on the same level, but there's so many characters that are named in here, and the details of all the cultures are so well thought through. They didn't just throw in a bunch of stuff. Like it's very detailed, very immersive. We have been reading it out loud together, because I've read it several times, at least the first few. I haven't read the last 3 yet, so I'm excited for when we get to those. But we've been reading through all of them out loud, which is actually when Nick commented on us reading while walking. We've been taking walks around during this pandemic while reading, and we have people comment on that occasionally. I think we just had someone comment on it the other day, and they were like, "Really? You're walking while reading? How are you doing that?" So we've been reading out loud. We're almost at the end of book 4, which I had here, and it's clearly a very well-loved book. I don't know how well you can see how beat up this is.
Oh, wow.
I used to read it a lot. I'd reread through every single book, when a new one came out, back when I had the time to do that, because they're enormous. We've got like 150 pages left, so really close to the end of book 4. For anyone who's read through Wheel of Time, I don't want to talk about too much that's in there, other than it's a massive epic. And I think it is going to become a TV series that's supposed to come out, I think, early next year. I don't know how much things have been delayed in these days. And I think the series is supposed to be the first 2 books in the first season, which is exciting. I've been looking forward to that like my whole life. So
awesome. I started reading the first Wheel of Time book a couple months, probably about 2 months ago, I want to say. And it wouldn't, like, I would have finished it before now, but I've been reading a lot of other books at the same time. I've been switching off with The Eye of the World, which is the first Wheel of Time book, Leviathan Wakes, which is the first Expanse book, Tolkien's Unfinished Tales, and then so those were like my 3 I can finish whenever I finish them. And then I've started attending various book clubs that I've known about, been a member of, but had kind of not been reading the books or going to the meetings. And now I'm reading, and there's a lot of free time to join a Zoom call. So all these book clubs have gone online, like the Gaylaxians, North Country Gaylaxians book club, where I've read, last month I read the book Finders by Melissa Scott. That's Melissa Scott, right? Finders, where is that? Yes, Melissa Scott. You did.
Thank you.
What?
Okay. I did not like it.
You did not like it. Why did you not like it?
I just didn't connect with any of the characters. And this is one of those books where there's nothing wrong with it to me. Like, it's a completely fleshed out world. Like, everyone seems like a complete character. I just bounced off of it. I just couldn't connect with anybody. And so it's like, it's not you, it's me.
I get it.
Cool,
I get it. I feel like I had issues with the book that other people in the club did not. I felt that there were definitely some issues surrounding drug addiction and consent that were never addressed in the book. The main character is dying, and then all of a sudden gets this miracle cure, but is now going to be hooked on topping up this cure for the rest of her life, and will have to be fighting with other people who are also looking to top up their cure as well, and was never asked if she wanted to take the cure. And I mean, there may be a question of, choose painful death right now or take this thing that's going to have you hooked for the rest of however long you live. I'm guessing most people would probably take the I'll live option, but she was never given that choice.
So I got confused because you said Finders by Melissa Scott, and I was thinking of Finder by Suzanne Palmer.
That must have been a very confusing not really synopsis, but
I was like, that doesn't look like the cover that I recall, and Finder is sci-fi.
Well, Finders is also sci-fi. There are a lot of very interesting concepts in it. But yeah, I just didn't take it. And then for the second Foundation book club, I read Kim Stanley Robinson's Galileo's Dream, which was this story that went back and forth between Galileo's time during the Renaissance and the far future on the moons of Jupiter. And it was also kind of a fascinating book, although I think I actually enjoyed the Galileo parts better than the science fiction-y moon parts. And then, so those were the book club books, and right now I'm making my way through a book called Gideon the Ninth, which is necromancers in space with some of the characters being lesbian. And it's kind of a fascinating murder mystery, kind of set in this like spooky world of like bone sorcerers where they grow skeletons out of the earth and stuff like that.
Oh,
I'm intrigued by literally every sentence and word you've used to describe it. So I'm just.
Well, it is the book that the North Country Gaylaxians will be discussing on Tuesday, I think.
this coming Tuesday. David added a comment in the YouTube chat.
This coming Tuesday.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
Can I read a book
about 56% of the way finished. So I have, what is that? 44% to finish before Tuesday. I can do it. I can do it.
I believe in you. Gideon the Ninth. I'm also typing down, I'm just typing down the list, but if it's by Tuesday, I might have to find a way to get it sooner. Because everything about that sounds really cool. And I liked your comment about like Galileo's Dream. Oh, sorry, you finished, and then I wanted
No, go ahead.
When you were talking about Galileo's Dream, and you said that like it's his like his life and it's like his contemporary time and what we think of as ancient history now, and then like the moons of Jupiter, but you actually liked his life more. And there's quite a few stories that have had like fantastical elements that I've read are just like either like sci-fi or fantastic, fantasy. And it's like, no. Give me the personal drama. That's the better part. And it just really speaks to a really well-written characters. And I want you to finish, and then I want to circle. There's like a short story I read a while ago that's what I think of when it's just like, there's this really cool part that should be the better part, but I care about these characters, and the rest of it is okay.
I don't remember what I was going to say, so I'm finished.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I throw a lot of words out there, and then eventually I'll come collect them again.
I'm going to jump in really quick before you start, just with a couple comments from the chat, and then you can keep going. Just because Scott Roberts said the Lambda Sci-Fi Book Club also read Ancillary Justice in 2014. They all enjoyed it. So apparently this is something I should be adding to my reading list as well, because I hadn't read it yet. He also said thanks for taking up the Wheel of Time, which I would do every day. It's probably my favorite book series of all time. And then the last one, Larry had a shout out, huge Wheel of Time fan as well. And then David shared that the second Foundation will be taking up a GLBT relevant book and kind of a Halloween read to Octavia E. Butler's Fledgling on Sunday, November 1st at 1:30.
I just read that too. Okay.
Oh, you did?
Are you sure?
Yeah. Fledgling.
It's not fledging or something?
It's about vampires. It's wild. And so I might have just given myself brain damage reading all these books and then like experiencing another life for a small period of time and then trying to continue on with real life that's on fire and full of bullcrap, and then moving on to another much more interesting life. But I'm going to come back to that Galileo tangent.
Yes.
Okay.
Short story.
Okay, so now I'm struggling to find the story, but this is going to be, I'm going to tell a story like my mom tells a story. We'll get there eventually, but we're taking the scenic route. So a long time ago on a website called Facebook, I accidentally joined what is called the Space Lesbian Book Club because I'm really good at the internet and a bunch of my friends had been in it. And so that book club on Facebook has suggested nothing but amazing stories so far, and it's just expanded my horizons, and probably why I'm reading like really good books now is mostly it's all their fault. They have nothing but good suggestions. But there was a story in there, and I'm gonna find it, about these two kids in high school, and one of the kids is trans, and they're having the expected awful time in high school dealing with, well, high schoolers, and also the struggles of, you know, being trans in like a Western high school. But then there's also stuff about like magic and demons and bargains and things like that. But that story was so good and the characters were so good that I was like, I don't care about the demons. I want to hear about this high schooler's life. And I was like, wait, what?
No, I understand. I mean, that is what all these post-apocalyptic young adult books are about. You know, they don't tell you what happened to the world. They just focus on the people living in the world. But in those, I don't know if it's because I'm not a young adult, I actually am more interested in the world than in the characters. Like I tried with the Hunger Games, and I could not connect to the characters. I just kept focusing on like, why is the world like it is? And so I just wasn't able to get into it. But I mean, I totally understand that can be the draw, the human factor, rather than all of the out there stuff. And especially now, you know, where we really do need to be focusing a lot on the human factor.
Well, that's what makes stories good. Like I've read a lot of sci-fi that has big concepts, all the lasers and ships and all the acronyms you can throw at it, and they're terrible because you don't care about anyone, and the actual human characters, the struggle and the things that connect us to one another are just not there. And really any good story, and especially like good sci-fi, because I consume a lot of it, is human at its heart, because we're humans reading it, and it should be a good story that connects you to it.
Have you read Leviathan Wakes, either of you? It's the first book in the Expanse series, and I am loving it. It is hard science fiction in that it's set on asteroid belts, and there's a lot of stuff that has to do with how gravity works and ships and decompression and all this. But what it's really about is a mystery and a political thriller set in these environments. And it's just fascinating. With both the Eye of the World and Leviathan Wakes, I'm about 3/4 of the way through. And I just finished Tolkien's Unfinished Tales. So, along with Gideon the Ninth and soon to be Fledgling, I'm hoping to finish a few of these. And I keep saying I won't start. Like, I'm not going to do this again with reading both The Expanse and Wheel of Time at the same time. I might take turns with the books, but I'm not going to be reading both at the same time, because when I have come back to them, I have had to go back a little bit and go, okay, what was I reading? So, yeah.
That's a really hard thing to do oftentimes, especially like big meaty series, is like to take a break or a hiatus. It almost feels like sometimes like almost like you're cheating on the the story by going to another story, because it's like, I don't know about you, but either I become invested or I just only have so much brain capacity that I just can't like encompass more than one world within me that's like actively ongoing. Like I'll have recommendations from like my brother about like a new series or some like a manga or something that's going on, and my first question is it done, or am I going to have to wait for the next chapter? And usually it's like, oh, it's ongoing. So somehow he's really smart though, so somehow he can juggle multiple series updating monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, and he just encompasses all that in his brain, and he's wicked smart, so he can do that, but like this dummy can't. So I'm just like, okay, I'll wait till it's done.
Is he reading the Cosmere series from Brandon Sanderson?
Brandon Sanderson's another one. Oh, that reminds me of another series. Great. No, he's not. He reads a lot of like manga and anime, like, you know,
Oh,
like
okay.
Japanese, and so he is my inroads into seemingly the most random of things. Like he's like, hey, did you read this series called Tales of Demons and Gods that is a translation of a Chinese male power fantasy known as a wuxia, which is like the genre for like male power fantasy? And so he just gets me into like, hey, check out this Korean light novel that just got translated. And I'm like, I'm in.
I didn't know that the WUXIA, however you pronounce it, wuxia or wuxia.
That's
Yeah,
true.
I know that's also a film genre, although I've generally heard it translated as like kind of the medieval hero type of stuff, less than a male power fantasy. And in fact, a lot of the wuxia films have very strong female characters who are usually wielding swords and such.
Yeah, as soon as you said that, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm probably so dang wrong that it's actually gone from past not being funny and back around to being hilarious, because I was just seeing discussion about the new Mulan, and that title was subscribed to it. I'm like, wow, okay, I was wrong before I even opened my mouth. That story, that like Tales of Demons and Gods, was the first time I'd ever heard of it, that term. And so I was like, well, I don't know what this means. And somebody somewhere said it was male power fantasy, and that story is definitely a male power fantasy. It's like popcorn or just like junk food. It's like, I know this isn't like good for me, but sometimes you just like a good training montage, and then you just give everyone their comeuppance.
Yep.
So I want to go back to The Expanse.
Okay.
Mostly because so I haven't read the book, but I have seen the first season.
Yep.
So I'm kind of curious. Have you watched the show, or you just read the book? Okay, so this might be hard because I'm curious how they compare a little bit, because I had a hard time getting into the show a little bit, though. I think in the sci-fi realm, I tend to prefer more of like light sci-fi, and I think that's much more of a hard sci-fi. But the other thing with the show that I found a little confusing is it felt like it was trying to combine like three different genres. There's like kind of three. Sorry, this is spoilers for anyone, but they're in like season 4. But so I apologize. But I'll try to keep it as spoiler free as possible. But there's sort of like three different storylines, and as the season goes on, they intercept a little bit more and more. I'm assuming past season 1 that they're going to be much more interconnected, but you can kind of see how they're sort of connected together. But then each of these 3 storylines feel like 3 very different genres, even though we're in the same show, because there's like the cop like mystery thing, and then definitely the political thriller. I was seeing that, and then there was like, I guess what I would normally expect out of maybe like traditional sci-fi, where they're like doing exploring in space kind of stuff. I don't know, the way that it was approached felt very different to me, even though I know it's in the same universe because I'm watching, it's all in the same show, but they weren't meshing to me, and I'm assuming that in future seasons that it does. I just hadn't gotten to any of those. Is that a little more clear in the books, do you think? Or
Well, it's interesting that you say different storylines, because the way the book is set up, and I've been told that James S.A. Corey is actually two people, and so I'm wondering if one. So the way the book is set up is that each chapter changes the point of view character. It's told in second person, but it is a second person from the point of view of either Holden or Miller. And each chapter switches back and forth. And at the beginning, Miller is on, and I'm forgetting the name of the asteroid that he starts out on as a cop. And investigating a mystery. And it very is a hard-boiled detective story. And then you have Holden, who is a captain of, well, he wasn't even the captain. He became the captain when his ship blows up, and he's on a away mission, so to speak. And so each chapter switches back and forth between Miller and Holden, Miller and Holden, Miller and Holden. And initially they're completely separate. And then at a certain point, they meet up. And so now it's still switching back and forth, but they're together. And then I'm at a point where it's kind of diverging again, but it's still going chapter by chapter. And so since I found out that James S.A. Corey is, I guess, two different people, I'm wondering if one is writing the Miller story and one is writing the Holden story. And that, depending on how closely the TV series is following it, is that the kind of varying plot lines. I wonder if that is on purpose, or I'm not sure. But and each chapter is kind of short. Like each chapter is, even though the book is long, each chapter is only about 10 pages, which I kind of like that, because then you feel you're really making progress through it. Yeah. You're like, I'm just going to read this chapter because I only have 8 pages left in it.
That's a dangerous, slippery slope, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wheel of Time is also similar. Like each chapter is only like 10 to 12 pages.
Well, until you get into book 4. Then you go from like a 650-page book to like a 980-page book.
I see.
And so all the chapters are a little bit longer. And when you're reading it out loud too, that 30-page chapter is a pretty hefty amount of time.
I see.
I just wanted to jump in about The Expanse before we leave. Like I bounced off of it actually pretty hard, and it was definitely one of those "it's not you, it's me," because like the show was good, but it wasn't necessarily even that it was felt dissonant. I just didn't connect to it. But what bothered me more is like hard sci-fi. Sign me up. I recognize like half the actors, and I've liked every single one. It's like I'm on board for all these people. Yes, and then it's like their characters, they seem cool. A gumshoe in space? Heck yes. And it's just like political intrigue and like class disparity between the Belters and the folks planet side, like right into my veins. But then I just bounced off of it. And so that's another one of those, like I got like halfway through the first season, and it's just like, I've given you enough time. And that's kind of something I wanted to bring up too, is like the idea of like a bitter ender is what I've heard them called, where it's like, I've started this and I'm going to finish it no matter how miserable it makes me. Or people like myself was like, you know what, this is a hobby, this is for enjoyment, I don't like it, I'm done, and I can walk away. And I used to be like a bitter, like I'm going to finish this, I started it, but now it's like I don't have time, I don't have the patience. And I wanted to hear your thoughts about like bitter ender, I don't care, somewhere between.
That's interesting. Right now, everything I've been reading, none of it has been so bad that I haven't said I'm going to finish this. Finders came close, but then I was just like, I am so close to the end, and it's not a bad book. There's just some parts that I am not a fan of, and now I can fully discuss it with the book club. But everything else I've been reading, has been good enough or enjoyable enough or easy enough, because there's a couple of books that I've read during this that I don't want to say I'm embarrassed about reading them, but I've been going through a checklist for all of the MCU related properties, which starts with the first Iron Man movie, but then it also includes all of the associated comics and TV series and novels. And of course, all these novels are written for, I wouldn't even say young adult audience, definitely a grade school audience. And, I probably would have loved them when I was in grade school. And, again, they weren't terrible. They were just, and, I could knock one out in like a sitting, even though it was like 200 pages, it's like 200 easy pages. And it just, kind of expands on the MCU lore a little bit. But kind of the antithesis of that, talking about meaty reading, I reread this year the I read right before the pandemic. I finished right at the start of the pandemic. I read the Silmarillion, which I fell in love with the Silmarillion. I
Really
was like, wow, everyone should read the Silmarillion. It is so good. And it is a crying shame that Tolkien died before it was published. And I don't know what the actual reaction was when it was published, but I know that his publisher wouldn't publish it when he was alive. So I don't know what changed when he died and Christopher, his son, was able to get it pushed through, but it is astounding. I love it so much. And then not only did I read it, but I listened to it on audiobook like 2 months later. And I then after the Silmarillion, I reread The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. I did not read those books when I was a kid. Like the first time I read The Hobbit was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. The first time I read The Lord of the Rings was about 4 years ago. And, again, I kind of wish that, I kind of am like, why didn't I read these when I was in high school? I probably would have been an even bigger nerd than I was, but I think it just would have been like more mind-blowing for me reading them as a kid. And I did buy copies of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit for all my nieces and nephews. So I'm like, I want you to read these, and they probably won't, and it doesn't matter. But then
sorry, there was a cool comment now that I got the YouTube link that they actually like compiled the various manuscripts into the Silmarillion. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't read it yet, but I could definitely see, like, I tried to read like one of the Lord of the Rings after I'd seen the movie as a young lad of about 14 and bounced off of it super hard, but that's also because as a young lad I was also really dumb.
I don't know. I mean, when I was in high school, I was reading the Piers Anthony Xanth novels, which are definitely light fantasy, and I was reading the Dragonlance series, which are based on a D&D campaign.
Is that Forgotten Realms?
It's by TSR, and at the time it was TSR, not Wizards of the Coast, but it's a different world than Forgotten Realms. They were both published by the same company. Forgotten Realms was one universe, and Dragonlance was another.
Okay, I probably read both. I was a voracious reader, but like Tolkien was definitely, I guess, someone would describe as like dry. for a young
You know,
reader for me, or for me,
and
I guess. I
he
can't
does
really.
get that reputation, and I don't want to be a gatekeeper, but I definitely wish that a lot of the people who absolutely can't shut up about the movies, to not to find probably a poor way of doing it, also would read his books with the same fervor that they appreciate the movies. And I know they're two separate things, and I will admit I am not a huge fan of the movies. The first one was okay. The Two Towers and the Return of the King, I still can't. I was, if theaters were open, I was considering doing the marathon at the Riverview this holiday season. Every year at the Riverview, they would do all three extended cuts,
Oh
and I
man.
was considering subjecting myself to that to see if, after rereading the books this year, if my opinion had changed. And part of it is that I feel that Peter Jackson focuses too much on the horror aspects, which makes sense. He started out as a horror director, but he focuses too much on the horrific aspects of the book rather than the beauty of Middle Earth and such. And yeah, I have become a huge Tolkien devotee, and in addition to the Silmarillion and the books again, I read a number of shorter works by him, and then I read the Unfinished Tales, which is kind of like other manuscript things that Christopher put together and put into a book and published after the Silmarillion. Like, the stories in the Silmarillion were mostly complete that his father had put together, and so like he was able to kind of give those almost a narrative, where Unfinished Tales are kind of like it says, they're unfinished, and so it's a lot more kind of excerpts, and there's tons of footnotes saying, see this part of the Silmarillion for more about this and such like that. And I'm just like going, oh, give me more, give me more. And in fact, I'm gonna be probably reading Book of Lost Tales Part 1, Book of Lost Tales Part 2, all 10 volumes of the history of Middle Earth. Go ahead, Amber.
As you should. I had a couple of things to say. One, just really quickly, there was some comments on the Tolkien works. David was also saying that he read, I guess I'm not sure if you're referring to Silmarillion or the Unfinished Tales. I think Silmarillion, but didn't like it as well as Jason. I haven't read Silmarillion yet, but mostly because when I read Lord of the Rings, which I did read in high school, probably about the same time that I had started to get into Wheel of Time, I was reading a lot of Ray Bradbury and things at that time too. And I mean, even then, like, I loved them, but they felt very dry to me. But I was a teenager then, so I feel like as an adult, I would maybe be able to approach it differently too. So I'd be interested to see. I've been wanting to read Silmarillion, but I've been intimidated because I've always told that, like, if Lord of the Rings is dry, then Silmarillion is drier than dirt. Like, but I want to try it. The other comment here, David was sharing that there's a brand new edition of Unfinished Tales that just came out on October 1st.
Really? Oh,
they
wow.
think it's the same text, but it features illustrations by the 3 illustrators of the current Tolkien calendar.
Oh, I bet. So the one of the other clubs in the Twin Cities, the Rivendell group, I think I have the name right. Sorry, David, I'm still new to the group. They had their Hobbit Day celebration on September 20 something. They do it annually, and in person they always have lots of cakes and stuff to celebrate Bilbo's and Frodo's birthdays. And this year, with it being Zoom, they were able to get a number of people who actually work professionally on Tolkien stuff. And so I bet that's kind of one of the things that was brought up on that day.
Awesome.
And there may have even been some of the illustrators in the Zoom session. I'm not sure.
Oh, wow.
I unfortunately had a conflict that day. I think that might have been our Who It Yourself day recently. I don't remember. There was something going on and I wasn't able to participate. I don't remember.
That's a bummer of a conflict. But
Yeah.
It definitely convinced me to take another crack at the series, because it's like there is a reason that people are comparing Tolkien to like a mountain that like you either recognize it's there or you actively have to avoid, but he is a mountain in fantasy. Like it's always there, it's always in the periphery, it casts an incredible shadow. And like I know it's another one of those, it's not you, it's me, because I feel that if I come back to it, it's going to be completely different, even though the only thing that's changed is me. And I think that's really cool that, you know, as our lives go on, that we can return to different works.
Absolutely.
And get so many different things from it. And
absolutely.
And Tolkien is just such a rich font of like not just inspiration and love and knowledge and camaraderie. It's so cool. I just watching like tons of videos about how it's like he invented like conlanging, or like the creation of language, and he like was a linguist first, and he like created the language, and he's like, who would speak this language? I bet some sort of elvish people, this dwarves would speak this language, so I guess I gotta make a race for people to speak these languages I came up with. And it's just, before I forget, there was like a contemporary review when it came out, and it was like the most backhanded compliment that I could imagine, and it was something along the lines of like, he didn't create this, he's merely the first person to chart an expedition to this land and guide the rest of us to it. And so it was like, there's something along the lines of like, he didn't come up with this, it's always been there, he's just the first to find it. And it's like, thanks, I guess. It was like a good review, but not like a nice review.
Yeah, that's weird. Huh. I would be interested to see what you think of, I mean, for whether you are reading the Silmarillion or whether you're reading the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings for the first time. I would be interested to follow your progress and thoughts about it. And I'm thinking that the Silmarillion is gonna become like an annual reread for me. That
really?
is how, like, I'm probably feeling the same for the Silmarillion that you were feeling when you were reading Wheel of Time for the first time.
Okay.
So, you know, if you do start reading it at some point, maybe not within the next month or so, I might go through it for a third time at the same time, and just we can have a little Silmarillion book club.
I'll let you know.
I'll go back to it just for you, Nick. That's awesome, because I've seen it almost bandied about as like a badge of honor, just like, I got through the entire Silmarillion and I didn't cry once.
What? I didn't feel that way at all when I finished reading it, and you know, like, I've read the Silmarillion. Have you read the Silmarillion? Because I've read the Silmarillion.
One person who kind of like uses it as like a badge of honor is actually Amber's dad, and he's just like, I read the Silmarillion, and I don't, Amber, could you? Because I
also
heard
loved it.
Well, see, there you go. You know, think how surprised your dad is going to be when you've been like, oh yeah, I read it. No big deal. No big deal.
I was gonna say that I think if I would definitely let you know if I start reading it, but I think I'd have to get through Wheel of Time first. And I've got like 7 more books, 1,000 pages.
All right. When you get through them, we can start the Silmarillion book club.
Awesome. I feel like you like the Silmarillion probably about as much as I love the Lord of the Rings movies extended edition that I watch on repeat all the time. So I'm sure.
Possibly. You know, when I first saw the Lord of the Rings movies, like I said, I thought the first one was okay. I didn't love it, but I enjoyed it. The second and the third one, I the way I joke is that I felt like I was gonna die in the theater seat because the movies were never, ever, 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 ever gonna end. And a friend said,
"We have a lot of endings. Actually, the third movie had like, what was it, 6, 7 endings?
Well, exactly.
Your money's worth."
And a friend said that the reason why I didn't like it is because I had never read the books. And I didn't really like that argument because I'm like, they should be able to stand on their own. The books and the movies are separate. They should be able to stand on their own. And then I read the books and I loved the books. And in fact, the Two Towers is like one of my favorite, and it was my least favorite of the 3 movies. I'm like, these books are so good. And why did Jackson leave this out? And why did Jackson leave this out? I love these parts. Why is he changing these things? And so, like, in fact, not only did my friend's theory not hold water, but it made me dislike the movies more after reading the books, going, what was he? Does he think he's smarter than Tolkien? Is that what he thinks?
And
does he think he can improve on what Tolkien did?
And that's what I love seeing, like the nitty gritty on, like, writing screenplays and like behind the scenes and stuff is that fascinating look into how to translate from one medium to another. Because that's like reading through the whole Wheel of Time with Amber, now that she's mentioned that it's going to be a TV series, in my mind, I'm like, is this going to make it into the show? How are they going to shoot it? And there was literally a scene we were discussing where it had a series of flashbacks, but actually in like reverse chronological order, where they were like going more recent and then going further back and further back and then further back.
This when they were in the cart, in the wagon?
No, but that was also kind of confusing. No, this is in book 4, so you haven't gotten that far yet.
All right.
But yeah, the cart thing in book 1 is like kind of the same concept where it was sort of a
flashback within a flashback.
Yeah.
And we were definitely, because they would in these like flashbacks, they would have a character as like they were very advanced in years, but then it'd be a completely different scenario, and they'd be like, oh, that young whelp so and so, and you're like, wait. And we were discussing how in the book it's kind of jarring and kind of tough to follow, and maybe that's just me being kind of dumb again, but we're like, visually this would translate really well, because it's like, okay, you've got this actor, now that actor's a lot younger, we just saw this person, and now it's the different time period, different people, but same person, only younger. And what's nice about like like a movie or a TV show is you get to use all this shorthand with like visual cues, audio cues, different things like that. But even just like body language, we can probably figure out it's the same person, that in a book they need to expand on. But you also get that liberty in a book. And so like you don't have to cut anything in a book, it's a book. You can have all the stuff you need. You can have all the Tom Bombadils you want, all the live long day. And somebody's explained it to me why they left him out. It's like, he's a big character, he's important, but at the end of the day, he wasn't like critical to getting the ring to Mordor. Sorry, spoilers for anybody if you haven't seen, read, heard of, caught secondhand excerpts from.
So, he cut all this stuff out of the Lord of the Rings, and then he adds a whole bunch of completely unnecessary stuff into the Hobbits. you know, that
I have issues.
that would definitely wasn't there, and also wasn't in the appendices. You know, people say, "Oh, this was stuff." No, it wasn't in the appendices. I read the appendices now. Do you want to know something that'll blow your mind? I think I've mentioned this to Amber before. In one of the appendices to the Return of the King, there is a pronunciation guide to a lot of the stuff that Tolkien wrote. And one of the things he wrote is that if a word ends in the letter F, it's supposed to sound soft like a V, like elv and dwarf and Gandalf. Everyone has been mispronouncing Gandalf according to Tolkien's own pronunciation guide in The Return of the King.
Next, you're gonna tell me the T in Voldemort is silent.
Hey, it's in the appendix of The Lord of the Rings. Words that end in an F have a V sound.
But, you know, it's not like Tolkien was some linguist or something.
I
It's
know.
just an appendix in a book. It's not a big deal.
I've been listening to a podcast about Tolkien, and they're reading through The Lord of the Rings, and all of his sea names have a hard C sound, so it's like Celeborn, Celebrimbor.
I recognize that name from Shadows of War, the video game, because I am well read.
There's a name Cirdan, and it's pronounced Círdan. And one of the podcasters, after being corrected, said, language doesn't work that way. And I'm like, I think Tolkien knew how language worked. That's kind of what he lived for.
Right. You could just say, whoops.
Anyway, we are coming to the end of the hour, and this has been amazing. I miss conventions so much and having a place to do this. So I'm really looking forward to, if people listening to this don't know about the North Country Gaylaxians book club, it's the second Tuesday of every month. When it's safe to meet in person, we meet at Quatrefoil Library. Hopefully it'll still be around after all this. But right now we are doing Zoom meetings, which you can find out the Zoom information by going to the North Country Gaylaxians website, which I think you can find by Googling it or going to the North Country Gaylaxians Facebook page. As we sign off, outside of Wheel of Time, what is next on your reading list? Not counting the next 11 Wheel of Time
book. I have two actually that I've been starting to read on the side since we're reading Wheel of Time out loud. So I just started Monstrous, which isn't, I guess, a book. It's a graphic novel. So, but I mean, it's still a book, but which Nick already read through. I'm almost done with the first one. I mean, it's a really quick read, so I'm sure I'll be through it really quickly. It was a little darker than I was expecting it to be right off the bat, which I guess.
The name like Monstrous?
Well, and that's why I was like, wow, this is a little darker. And then I was like, well, it was called Monstrous, so like I probably should have just assumed. It's been good so far. But I'm in like chapter 4 of the first book. So another couple hours, I'm sure I'll be through them. And then I started reading The Paper Magician, which is a pretty short book. I'm only a couple chapters into that too. So I don't have an opinion about it yet.
What about you, Nick?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Brandon Sanderson earlier, because somehow through a bizarre twist of fate, and I don't know how I think it was at probably the SDCC, one of the booths, one of the booksellers booths, maybe the Simon and Schuster one. I'd have to double check. There was it's called Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. Okay. And so that one and then the sequel Starsight are two really, really good sort of more young adult oriented sci-fi novels, and they're
Okay.
so good. And the second book ends on such a brutal cliffhanger, and now the third one's not coming out until at least 2021. And it's crazy that Brandon Sanderson, is such a well-renowned fantasy writer, and I've only read his sci-fi.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, he finished off the Wheel of Time series. There is a series of books. So I've been watching a lot of BookTube lately, which is just YouTube for books, people talking about books. I'm even thinking about starting my own BookTube channel. But they've been talking about all these books that I really want to read, various series. The Gentleman Bastard series, starting with Eliza Locke Lamora. The Band series, with the first ones being Kings of the Wild. And let me find the series here. The Murderbot Diaries. I really want to read the Murderbot Diaries. The first one is called All Systems Red. And
I've read that one.
Yeah.
That literally popped up when I said, hey, turns out that novel you read is a series. That is literally the one I was talking about.
Nice.
Holy crap.
Nice.
It is. The first one's really good. It's actually it's almost a novella.
Yeah,
so
it says it's 144 pages on Goodreads.
Screams through it. It's a delight. And now that it's a series,
Amber, do you know what the Murderbot Diaries is about? Apparently, yeah, it's a security robot or something that doesn't want to do these, murdering anymore and just wants to watch soap operas.
It's really great.
Goodness.
I love the themes in it because it's very much like it's in this like suit of armor, and so it seems like the faceless droid. And as it starts to develop more of a personality, the humans around it are like, "Huh, you're not just an appliance. I guess we have to like think about you differently." And then the murder bot is also like emotions. And there's a lot of parallels between the Ancillary Justice series and like so this is what you humans do, and then in the All Systems Red and the Murderbot Diaries. And so that's probably why Goodreads is like, hey, did you know? And I'm like, I didn't, but I love you.
All right. Well, thank you both for participating, and I'm gonna definitely propose we do some more of these. Maybe, for Console Room Who It Yourself, we can do some book club type stuff with Doctor Who books. So all of you out there who have been watching, thank you, and enjoy your reading during these trying times. Thank you.